Hi, my name's Kurt Johnson, doing a Mindful Monday here from Shawbucks, Jamestown, New York, on Chautauqua Lake. I pretty much haven't done a Mindful Monday since the COVID because the topic of love and fear creating movement just didn't seem to make sense to put it out there when the whole media, healthcare system, everything was all so fear-based. I just didn't want to create more separation from exposing fear and love and how they create movement, so I just let it go. So today's topic for the Mindful Monday is simply that hate is just another energetic frequency or vibration between the poles of love and fear. So for those of you who don't know me or who Shawbucks or what it's all about, Shawbucks I built and opened in March 31st, 1995. We've been here almost 30 years. The name Shawbucks was my great uncle's nickname, Clarence Olson. He was born in 1903, and they lived on a farm, and his father was a brick mason, and they used to use wood a lot. So he got his nickname. They were out cutting wood, and his job was to remember the buck saw. And so they had some drinks and whatnot, and one of his brothers, probably Ingvi, reminded him, "Hey, Clarence, don't forget the Shaw buck." So boom, that's his nickname, and that's the name of the business, because Shawbucks meant a lot to me. I remember as a kid, he died in 1972 when I was 7. And I just remember at Christmas, he was a vagrant, he was homeless. He got his act together later in his life, and he would give us grandkids each a silver dollar at Christmas. And that was probably more than 50% of his net worth. And then when he passed away, he had given me a samurai sword for World War II. He saw a lot of action in World War II. He was a medic. So I imagine that's why he was a vagrant. He would work the farms up here in the north in the summers, and then he would hobo a train down to Florida and work the farms down there in the winters. So that's the story of Shawbucks. I'm a carpenter by trade. When in my 20s, I like to drink, so I joke around and say that I put my two trades together. I like to build and I like to drink, so I built a bar and called it Shawbucks. So that's who I am, and that's a little story about Shawbucks' background. So we'll start today's Mindful Monday. You can't be happy all week if you don't start on Monday. Should you choose to be happy, life is choice. So the topic of these Mindful Mondays is a philosophy I've been developing for almost 40 years. I had an experience in 1985. And it really showed me that fear and love truly do create movement. And I've been practicing this and trying to implement it into my life. So my philosophy is called the energy within me. And basically that energy is also within you. Energy by definition is the ability to create motion or movement. And I believe we do that through love or fear. Through love, we create movement through compassion, kindness, sharing, caring. And through fear, we create movement through shame, guilt, lack, limitation, and hate. So hate, really, between the poles of love and fear, is simply just energetic frequency and vibration between the poles of love being positive and fear being negative. And so I'll go in a little more definition there in a minute, but the me actually represents mindful eatery, because we're consuming a diet of food, thought, and environment. Our diet of food precedes our mood, but also our mood precedes our food. From Bruce Lipton, I learned that your thoughts precede your biology, and I also believe your biology precedes your thoughts. Your environment, as so within, as so without, and vice versa. What's out is within. And this basically creates up what I call the mindful eatery. So back to energy and its ability to create movement. We have the freedom to choose love to create movement through compassion, kindness, generosity, and we have the free doom to create movement through hate, shame, guilt, lack, limitation. When the power of choice chooses the energy of freedom or the energy of love to create movement over fear, then the world will know peace and a new heaven on earth will be our experience. And I believe at that point, the peoples of the planet will come together and form a new race on the planet called humanity. I believe that we are moving from an energetic shift from the old paradigm, or maybe it's assimilation, where we die from fear and we live to love, and we live to love, but we die from fear. The only thing that can separate you from love is fear. And biblically, I mean, that's what they called a sin. You know, the mark is love that we're trying to hit. And if you miss that mark, it's a sin. So basically, I don't really think you can sin without fear, because it's a separation of love. Look at the original sin. It was embarrassment. You know, Adam and Eve bit in the fruit of knowledge, and they both experienced duality. They realized they thought they were separate from each other, and they became embarrassed. So metaphorically, they clothe themselves in leaves of fear. And like I've said before, clothing yourselves in leaves of fear is like trying to have sex with your clothes on. You can get really close, but you really can't go all the way. You don't get the true full experience. And so you have this physical, you could call it ego, that the ego can't exist without fear, because it wouldn't have anything to defend or protect. But equally so, the divine ego couldn't exist without fear, because in this realization, fear becomes the return to love. You have the outgoing, the return, kind of like the prodigal child returning back to the father, and how great it felt, the outgoing and the return. So in this paradigm we're leaving of dying from fear and living to love, we're moving into the new paradigm or shift, which is we live to love and we love to live. And I can just see that energy shift, and the more we realize that hate, shame, guilt, lack, limitation, all those things are just a vibrational frequency in between the poles of fear and love, that it's very much like a piano. You've got different scales, you've got different vibrations and different levels of hate, different levels of compassion, and different sub-levels. And so, you know, at the lower vibrating levels is the left side of the piano. You got your scale, your chords, and you just keep moving up. And once you go through this process and understand it, you realize that fear and love can separate us, but understanding the true principle of fear, it becomes a return to love. And I had just watched Robert Edward Grant, and I realized that when he was on Danica Patrick's podcast and talking about the Hermetic principles in this book, Kabbalah, I've heard about it, never looked into it, and it parallels everything that the energy within me philosophy I've been working on for so long and sharing through these Mindful Mondays. The only difference is that their poles are between love and hate. And actually, if you truly understand the scale, it's between love and fear, positive and negative. And another thing I learned from Robert was the Eye of Horus, and that, you know, the square root of 5, the square root of 3, and the square root of 2 can be all found in that. Just like the Fibonacci can be found in your hands, the 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, and so on. You can also find the square root of 5, 3, and 2 within your hand. And it's very symbolic of the hand single of love. You have the square root of 5, you have the square root of 3, and you have the square root of 2. And this is love. That's a hand signal for love. So as fear and love come together, they kind of form this geometric shape. and the two become one because they're identical. They keep each other in harmony and balance. You could say the reflection of the image of God could be happy, you know. We think happy thoughts for health and we think anxious thoughts for illness, but once you realize that, the two can harmonize each other and become one. And this is kind of like a pyramid, and within this pyramid you have the heart shape that could represent all these energies coming together and harmonizing. And if you hold it in front of you, it almost looks like the eye of Horus, and you can literally look in and see the feminine and masculine energies harmonized with their positive and negative energies harmonizing and balancing each other. So I mean, if you have namaste, we've talked about this, you also got to have negative namaste. You know, I see the oneness in you that's also in me, and then you also have to realize the negative namaste. I see the screwed up mess that is within you is also within me, of separation from fear. And as you can bring these together, you form another new, you know, two worlds becoming one, basically. So there's many stories and ways that I can express that love and fear create movement, and that your physical ego, the ego can't exist without fear because it wouldn't have anything to defend or protect. And your divine ego can't exist without fear because fear is the return to love. When these two come together and harmonize, you really get and feel and experience a beautiful thing. So with that said, I wish you guys the best. I have a great and happy new year, and Lakesh, which means I see all of you. I see the beauty, I see this, I see all of you, and Lakesh.